Even though the pandemic almost killed it and production stopped sooner than planned in 2021, the A380 just won't die. The plane is back in the news because a new airline is being built around it. More and more superjumbos are also flying again thanks to a renaissance in commercial flight after the pandemic. Global Airlines is a British business that wants to start flying across the Atlantic next year. It's bought a 16-year-old A380 as the first plane in an all A380 fleet, at least for now, and is currently fixing it up to meet its own standards. It's an unusual deal on the used market for an airplane that people like, but airlines have had trouble making money on because of its high running and high maintenance costs and huge size. Lufthansa sold 6 A380 planes to Airbus, then something bad happened. It's a great plane when used right and on the right route, says James Asquith, CEO of Global Airlines. We'll be looking to put a lot of money into fixing up the A380s we already have and the ones we hope to add in the future. Asquith started Holiday Swap, which is the parent company of Global and a home-swapping vacation network. He also holds the Guinness World Record for being the youngest person to visit every country on Earth. I've flown on about 280 different airlines and sat there to see what's good, what doesn't work, and what can be improved, he says. We've set this up so that financially we can do a lot of exciting things that no new airline that isn't government funded has been able to do in the last 40 years. How much did it cost? The A380 was one of the first ones ever made, and Singapore Airlines got it in 2008. Singapore ended its lease agreement with the plane's owner, the German company Doric, which then rented the plane to the Portuguese charter company Highfly. It was then said that it was the only A380 that could be chartered anywhere in the world. After that, the plane flew with a number of airlines, including Air Senegal, Norwegian, and Madagascar carriers. Highfly will partly turn it into a cargo plane by the middle of 2020. They want to take advantage of the increase in demand for air freight caused by the pandemic, but the Portuguese company broke the deal and gave the A380 back to Doric at the end of 2020. Since then, the plane has been kept at 2 French airports, Toulouse and Lourdes, which have special places for long-term storage. Airbus only made 251 A380s, which is a lot less than the 750 it wanted to make. This type has probably been taken out of service 20 to 25 years earlier than usual for a wide-body plane. Only 12 years after the first business flight, the first plane was taken out of service in 2019. It doesn't have much of a market for used planes, and used A380s have always had trouble selling. Global Airlines is the first new airline to use the A380 since All Nippon Airways in 2019, and the first to use a used plane to do so. Asquith says not all 380s are the same when asked why he picked this A380 over others for sale. And we're not just looking at the cabin or interiors, we're also looking at how well it's kept up, how new the landing gear is, and most importantly, how good the engines are. The only thing Global and Doric are saying about the sale price is that it's in the 8 figures. Rob Morris, who's in charge of consulting at the flight analytics company Cirium, says that the jet's value depends on how well it's taken care of and can be anywhere from $10 million to $40 million if all of its parts are worn out. In any case, Morris says that Global will have to spend more money to fix up the plane, which has already been painted in its new color scheme and made ready to carry passengers. This could cost as much as $50 million. When you compare this to the A380's list price of $450 million for a brand new plane in 2018, it's still a great deal. Traveling in style. Starting an airline is a hard business to get going, and doing it with an A380 fleet is even harder because the economics of the plane haven't worked out well for many of its owners. Air France will be the first airline to get rid of its entire fleet in May 2020. Since then, Singapore Airlines, Qantas, Emirates, and Air France have all gotten rid of 17 A380s. Emirates, the national airline of the United Arab Emirates, is the only airline that's made the A380 a success. It's also by far the largest operator, having bought more than half of all the A380s ever made. Asquith says, a lot of people have written about whether or not the A380 has a second life, but the truth is it has only ever been used by Emirates. They know how to use the planes like pros. A big plane doesn't always mean it has a lot of seats. It depends more on what you can offer on the goods. But unlike Emirates, Global won't have a premium economy class. Emirates just added a premium economy to nearly 60 of its A380s. The airline will be based at London's Gatwick Airport, which suggests that it's not aimed at business travelers. It'll mostly fly across the Atlantic to North America, starting with New York and Los Angeles. There are plans to add more UK cities, which Asquith says are badly underserved, and he wants to start in spring 2024 with at least 2 A380s. The CEO is also quick to dismiss any similarities between Norse and failed transatlantic startups like Norwegian and WOW, as well as current ones like Norwegian, which has a fleet of 10 Boeing 787s and offers flights from European cities like Oslo and London to half a dozen US destinations, as well as Jamaica, Thailand, and Barbados. Asquith says a race to the bottom in terms of prices isn't always good for the long-term growth of the industry. Price competition could be accompanied by an increase in quality. We think there's a good chance that we can make a product on board that's not as dense as some of the carriers. We should remember that it's great that you can fly between countries in 6 to 8 hours. Chances of success. Rob Morris, an expert, says that it would be hard for global airlines to take all 484 seats on its A380s. The A380 is an aircraft for flag carriers with very few dense routes and a certain cost and revenue profile, he says. But we never thought it would have much success in secondary markets, just like the 747-400 never had much success as a passenger aircraft. I'm not sure what Global sees that others don't. It's a risky thing to do. It'll cost a lot of money. Even though I wish them luck, I don't see how the airline could be successful. Richard Abulafia, an aviation expert with Aerodynamic Advisory, says starting a new, very small international airline has been done before, but no one has ever done it well. They only go down a few paths, and even if they make progress, the big players can easily beat them. It's much easier for a low-cost local airline like JetBlue to expand into international flights when they're already doing well. Asquith is aware of these problems, but he seems to be sure that the way Global Airlines is set up, from the planes to the people who work there — recently he put former US Air Force and UK Civil Aviation Authorities officials in key positions — puts him in a good position to succeed. Why is the Super Jumbo A380 coming back into use? 4 years ago, for example, most new airlines could rent a very old plane and start out with a product that isn't exactly eye-catching, he says. But now we live in a different world where aviation commentary goes viral and people have a lot of thoughts. The most important thing we want to do now is put out a strong product from the start, one that we think is the best on both sides of the Atlantic. A smaller plane would not fit with our brand. He goes on to say that Global can fill that aircraft probably 65% of the time and still be fine, and that people will go out of their way to fly on an A380. The plane is still making a steady comeback after the pandemic. There are 141 A380s in use with 9 companies, which is about 60% of the rest of the world's fleet. Lufthansa was the last airline to put it back on its plan. The first A380 flight from Munich to Boston was one of the most watched flights of the day on Flight Radar 24. Overall, it seems like Asquith isn't scared of criticism. When I went and visited every country in the world, everyone, including my parents, told me it was impossible to do, he says. Everyone should know that we're doing this to make jobs, competition, and a better product, I said. Why wouldn't people want to do that? Thanks for watching this video.